today. We are in the final week of our Already Ready series. Oh man, has this been good? Has it empowered you? I gotta tell you, I was coming into today, and I was already pumped, okay? Could I acknowledge that? And I know I should stay on brand and say I was already ready. I was already pumped for what was happening today. And then right before this service, I had a conversation with my friend Tim. And Tim comes up to me and he goes, "Man, I just love church. I just love church." And he shared this. I got no permission, but I'm not going to give his last name. And he says, when you tell stories of what church was like when you grew up, that was me. And there was so much of it that I didn't like. But I love being at church. And when church was done last week, I was like, I can't wait for next week. I was supposed to work today, but I was coming here. There's no way I was missing what was happening here today. They're the best. All right, so here we go. Last week of the series, we do this together the whole way through, okay, church? Cameramen, be ready, okay? Could I just give you a heads up? Cameramen, be ready. We're doing this together the whole day. I want to give you the two verses that show the heart of Daniel's conviction. We have been in Daniel's life for the last couple weeks. And this today is what we see as the most significant moment of his life. And this is the heart of his conviction. Daniel chapter 6, verse 26 says, "I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions." Title of the message for today is Into the Eyes of a Lion. I want to talk about what do you do when your life is on the line and your faith is put to the test. Into the eyes of a lion. And hey, and just for fun, turn the person next to you, say, "I am glad you get to worship next to someone as good looking as me." And then you can have a seat. It's not arrogance, you're just following instructions. Hey, everyone in Beaver Creek, could we welcome everyone online and at our campuses and everyone who's joining us today? If you're just joining us and you're hopping in right at the end of this series, we have tracked for the last couple weeks with Daniel and the phenomenal life that he has lived. And the thing that has been pressed upon me over the last couple weeks is to not view Daniel as a model for the life we're called to live, to not view Daniel as a good example for the life we're called to live, but to understand that the same faith that turned kingdoms upside down in his life, the same faith that enabled him to call out kings with his life on the line, the same faith that even in the simplest of circumstances enabled him to hold on to his convictions, is the very faith that lives in me and the very faith that lives in you. And I don't want you for a second as we walk through this today to go, man, wasn't that amazing how God worked in Daniel's life, but to understand that that same God lives in you. And you might not have any idea the impact of the life that you are living. You might not have any idea the way in which God is using the simplest of days to transform communities and nations and kingdoms and family members and lives of all those around. I told you we're going to preach this the whole way through. What are we? 2 minutes in? I told you we're going to go the whole way through. That is the life that you are called to live. And so we have seen Daniel begin Under the rule of Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel, taken from his own town, lives in exile in the nation of Babylon, trained to be an advisor to the king, and is faithful in very simple circumstances. At the very beginning, he is offered food that for him is against his religion, and so he chooses not to defile himself. And he is faithful there. And then he is faithful when the king has a dream, and instead of hatching an escape plan, he trusts that God will deliver the meaning of the dream. And then circumstances change, and Nebuchadnezzar is no longer king, and now Belshazzar is king. And Daniel has the confidence to look a king in the eyes and to say, your life is too light. Your days have no meaning. Your kingdom will be taken from you. Man, that's courage to look at a king and say that. And then Belshazzar is removed from his rule, and now Darius is king. And Daniel at this point in time is an old man. Like, he's been through it. He's been through so many different things. This is his third king now that he has served under. And his life, yet again, his faith, yet again, will be put to the test. And this is what happens in Daniel chapter 6, beginning in verse 1. It says, Darius the Mede, the new king, decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed a high officer to rule over each province. The king also chose Daniel and 2 other administrators to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interests. Daniel soon proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. Then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. If that's not a miracle right there, I don't know what is. Could we acknowledge that? Like, there must be a fault in how you're handling the government. They couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. That was fun. That's not in my notes, okay? Bonus material for the 11 o'clock. They couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. Let me make this note to you, please, okay? They don't say he had a Bible verse for every question. They don't say he had Jesus bumper stickers all over his donkey or horse or whatever they did in that day. There's none of that. They say the evidence of Daniel's faith at this moment, the testimony of his faith, is he was faithful, trustworthy, and responsible. How you live your life, even in arenas that you don't think are spiritual, matters immensely. It matters immensely. Martin Luther, the reformer of the faith in the 16th century, he said it like this: if you are called to make shoes, make the finest shoes in the world to the glory of God. I'll tell you, if you're going to school, go to school with all your heart for the glory of God. Write that essay paper, whether the teacher cares about it or not, as if it is God's very work that you're doing. If you're raising kids, raise those kids as if they are angels on earth, not the demons that you know they are sometimes, okay? Can we acknowledge that? Do what you do, knowing how you do it matters. He is faithful, always responsible, and completely trustworthy. So they concluded, our only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. So the administrators and high officers went to the king and said, long live King Darius. We are all in agreement, we administrators, officials, high officers, advisors, and governors, that the king should make a law that will be strictly enforced. Give orders that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone divine or human except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions. And now, your majesty, issue and sign this law so that it cannot be changed, an official law of the Medes and Persians that cannot be revoked. So King Darius signed the law. Now let me pause you right here. Let's imagine for a second, for those of you who know what's going to happen next, that you have no knowledge of what happens next in Daniel's life. Let's imagine for a second, for those of you who are just good readers and you can figure out the context clues and you go, well, we're in Daniel chapter 6 and there's a Daniel chapter 7, so I think he's gonna be all right. Like, right? I think he's gonna be all right. Let's imagine for a second that you don't know any of that. What do you think Daniel's gonna do? How do you think Daniel is going to respond when a law is issued that you can only pray to the king for 30 days? This is what I love. You already know how he's going to respond. With no knowledge of Daniel's history, if you've tracked with us, you already know how he's going to respond. And this is why. Because when he had to tell a king that his unfaithfulness was causing him to lose his kingdom, Daniel was faithful, right? When God coming through and giving the dream and the meaning to a dream caused his faith, his life to be on the line, Daniel didn't try to escape. He trusted that God would come through. He was faithful. At the very beginning, when he chose not to defile himself with food from the king's table, he chose to eat vegetables instead. And I know where some of you are like, there's where you lose me. Like I've got no problem defying kings. I've got no problem trusting that God's gonna come through. But if you tell me no meat, only broccoli, I'm out. That's too far. I can't handle that. Like that's just too much. I ain't going vegan. I'll do anything, Lord. I ain't doing that. No, thank you. Like we have watched him track through all these different pieces. So as he comes to this moment, we already know how he's going to respond. And this is why. Because Daniel is consistent. No amens, no applause, no cheers, no woo. And this is why. Because we don't care about consistent, do we? Like we don't care. Imagine this, those of you who are sitting next to your significant other leans over to you and just goes, I love you because of your consistency. Like your heart isn't skipping a beat. You're not like, oh, thank you so much. They don't make a Valentine's Day or a Sweetest Day card that says, I love your consistency. Like no one does it. No one has yet, I have ever seen, put in their social media bio, influencer, very consistent. Like we don't care about consistency, but consistency matters. Consistency, we need to raise the level of the value on consistency because consistency matters. If you're taking notes, write this down. Consistency is more important than intensity. Consistency is more important than intensity. Let me explain this to you. So let's imagine you have this moment, you go, I'm gonna get in shape. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna put all my focus, all my energy. 2020's been rough. Our dog has gained a COVID like 20, 25. Like, man, kids at home, just pass the food on to the dog. It's not been good for our dog. You go, whoo, I have gained, I didn't mean to bark there. That was completely accidental, I promise you. That was not. My bad. Last bark of the sermon, I can promise you that. You go, I've put on a little. I'm gonna get in shape. Are you gonna go, all right, this is how I'm gonna get in shape. I'm gonna go to the gym and I am gonna work out for the next 16 hours. No, just don't. Okay, and some of you are like, I shouldn't. Don't. You're not gonna be able to walk for a week. Like, don't do that. When we were in college, went down, we didn't have much to do, went down with some friends to work out. Bethany was my girlfriend at the time. She's like, I'll come with you. I was like, all right, let's go work out together. And so I'm like, kind of showing you can do some of this stuff, doing all my mansplaining, showing her how much I know what's going on down in the gym. Some of you do that, you know, you can do this. And so I set her up, I go, this is what you want. You want the seated row. Sit down, got the cable, pull it back. It's a back exercise. You want the seated row. Let's start with that. Showed her a couple of exercises. So me and my buddies, we go over, we're lifting, we're doing something. I look over and she's doing the seated row. She's going at it. She's going hard. It's like, yeah, she's working hard. Intensity. We move on to the next exercise, go to the next machine. Look over, where's Bethany? Oh, she's on the seated row still. Man, she's going after it. She wants a strong back. Look at her go. Like, move on, next exercise. We've been down there for like 20 minutes now. Look back. She's still on the seated row. Like, she's still going at it. She comes over to me when we finish the third exercise. She goes, whoo. I was like, how many did you do? 150. 150 reps on the seated row. So the next morning, we meet in the cafeteria for breakfast, and I'll say this, she was always beautiful, but a little disheveled more than usual. Always beautiful, but not quite herself. I went, you okay? Something off? She goes, yeah, I couldn't wash my hair this morning. I can't raise my arms above my shoulders. I couldn't get my hands up there to wash my hair. Consistency matters more than intensity. Like, you're not gonna go in this moment, you're not gonna go, you know what, I want sparkling white teeth. And so I am not gonna brush my teeth for the rest of the year. I'm just gonna brush them for 8 hours today. I'm gonna take care of the whole year in a single day. It's not gonna work. Your gums are gonna bleed. It's gonna be terrible. Don't do that. Like, it's not going to work. You can't go in your relationships. If you're in a romantic relationship, you can't go, listen, here's the deal. I am not gonna tell you for the next 364 days that I love you. I'm gonna get it all out today. I'm gonna put it in concentrate today. You're getting the whole dose today. Every 4 seconds, I'm gonna tell you how much I love you. And then nothing for the rest of the year. Is that going to work? Oh, guys, please be smart enough. Is that going to work? No, it's not. Consistency is more important than intensity. And then this is what we do in our faith, is we understand that for our physical bodies, we understand that for our dental hygiene, we understand that in our relationships. And then we walk into church and we go, oh God, meet us here. Oh God, I'm so glad you're here. I'll see you in 3 months. We'll pray in anguish for God to intervene, and then not look to God for the next season, and then not look to God until the next crisis comes. In your faith, consistency matters. In your faith, going to God continuously, over and over again, it's important. It's not the intensity that transforms your life. It's the consistency that transforms your life. Do we value consistency a little more now? Are we going, oh yeah, Daniel's consistent. Like, this is good. This is good. Lean over to the person next to you, tell them, you're so consistent. You're so consistent. Did it feel good? Tell me, did it feel good? No one's ever told me that. Did it feel good? You're consistent. I wasn't begging for a compliment there. No one had to do anything. It would have been nice if I would have gotten one, but that's perfectly fine. Let's move on. We know what Daniel is going to do. And then in verse 10, it says this, the edict's given. It says, but when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt down as usual in his upstairs room, with its windows open toward Jerusalem, just as he's called to pray. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. This is the part that stuck out to me. It says, he went home as usual. As usual. This is what Daniel does. This is who he is. He does this as usual. I want to ask you today, what is your as usual? What is your as usual? What is the thing when your life is pushed in a corner, when you're starting to get a little stressed out? What is your as usual? Let me confess mine, and then I'll meddle with yours. Could I do that? Confession first. Don't worry, I'll go first. Here's my as usual. When my inner life is a mess, okay? When my soul is all out of order and I feel hurried and I feel frantic and I feel like things aren't going right, I pick up and I put things away. You go, what does that mean, Kevin? there's nothing more significant than that. Like Bethany knows I'm not in a good spot because I'll walk in the door when I get home and I'll look at my kids and I'll go, everybody get up and put 15 things away right now. We're working on homework. Don't care. Put 15 things away this moment. We're praying to Jesus. Say amen. Put 15 things away right now. Let's go. Now, let me tell you how stupid that is, okay? Not just the prayer and the homework thing. This is what I inherently think by my actions. I would never say this, well, except out loud in this moment in a microphone to a room full of people. But other than that, I would never actually tell myself, because this is what I realize. If my inner life is a mess and my soul feels out of order and I have no peace, I have this thought that if I could just put things away, that somehow it'll solve the problem within my soul. If the stuff in my house is orderly, then somehow it'll change the peace that I feel within my heart. What does Kevin do? As usual, just as he's always done. When his life is stressed out and he needs an answer and he's pushed against the corner and he feels like he's being put to the test, I put things away. Your as usual is where your strength comes from. Your as usual is what your hope is in. And you will never be stronger than your as usual. It's not just a moment. It's not just a church thing. It's not just a let's celebrate because I said let's praise God together. It's your as usual. It's what you inherently go to over and over again when you feel like you need an answer. If your as usual is another person, this is where I'm going to start to meddle. If your as usual is another person, you're never going to be stronger than they are. Or let me say it like this. You're never going to be happier than their current emotional state in that moment. If your as usual is a substance, you will have the ability to numb your emotions but never to overcome them. If your as usual, your substance is social media, you will have the ability to distract yourself from the problems in your life but never to push through them and to become who you were called to be. Are we preaching enough yet? Are we meddling enough yet within this? It's your as usual. What do you go to? Your as usual is what your strength is from. Your as usual is the source of your hope. And this is what I love about Daniel. The edict is given. They go, no one can pray to any other God except for theirs. And it says, Daniel goes home. He went home and knelt down as usual. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done. Just as he had always done. He didn't have to start praying. He was already praying. He didn't have to all of a sudden in a moment start asking God to come through. He'd been asking God to come through all along. And so here's my call to you today to say this. Church, let's be consistent again in our faith. Let's raise the value of consistency. In a world that is willing to jump from one thing to the next, to the new thing that is shinier and better and has a bonus feature that we don't even know what it does, but we immediately need it in that moment because the advertisers tell us how significant it is. That jumps from relationship to relationship, from career to career, having this weird thought that somehow the new thing is gonna fulfill me. Don't we have enough evidence already to know that the next relationship isn't gonna fulfill your soul? Like, don't we have enough evidence already? Don't you have enough evidence in your own life to go, this material thing that I buy will make me feel better for a moment, but it cannot satisfy the deepest longings of my heart. And so that we would come within that and say, the world can be scattered, the world can be frantic, they can pursue intensity. Let's be consistent. I don't have to start praying. I've already been praying. I don't have to start praising God. I've been praising him all along. I go to God because he is my source, because he is my strength, because he is where my help comes from. I don't have to turn to anyone else. I'm already there. Daniel goes as usual. And after Daniel prays, just like he always does, It says, then the officials went together to Daniel's house and found him praying and asking for God's help. So they went straight to the king and reminded him about his law. Did you not sign a law that for the next 30 days, any person who prays to anyone, divine or human, except to you, your majesty, will be thrown into the den of lions? Yes, the king replied. That decision stands. It is an official law of the Medes and Persians and cannot be revoked. Then they told the king, that man, Daniel, one of the captives from Judah, is ignoring you and your law. He still prays to his God 3 times a day. Hearing this, the king was deeply troubled, and he tried to think of a way to save Daniel. He spent the rest of the day looking for a way to get Daniel out of this predicament. In the evening, the men went together to the king and said, Your Majesty, you know that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no law that the king signs can be changed. So at last the king gave orders for Daniel to be arrested and thrown into the den of lions. Then the king said to him, May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you. I read through this unbelievable moment in Daniel's life, and I question, would I respond how Daniel responds? Would I keep praying? Was I already praying? And this is what I think I would have done. I think I would have talked my way out of it. You go, yeah, I get that, Kevin. You try to talk your way out of a lot of stuff. No, I think I would have. I think I would have talked my way out of it. And this is the narrative that comes into my head. I go, Daniel, like you're in the palace. You can do so much good in the palace. You can influence the future. You can counsel the king. There's so much good that you can do in the palace, but you can't if you're dead. Like there's no more good that you can do if you're dead. Now, I don't know why they have this. I don't know why they have a den of lions, okay? I don't understand this about Babylonian culture. That seems to be asking for trouble just to have a den of lions waiting there. I don't know who takes care. I don't know if this is like a Carol Baskins thing going on that they're waiting on. I had to get there. I had to find a way to get there somewhere within this. But I think to myself and I go, I think I would have talked my way out of it. And here's the inherent problem with that. Is I believe at the end of the day, often I have this fundamental belief that I am responsible for the results of my life. And I am not. I am called to be faithful. God says to us, you are responsible for the input. I've got the output. The results are my responsibility. Faithfulness is your responsibility. If we attempt to claim the results for our lives, what will happen is we will negotiate our way out of every difficult circumstance. And all of a sudden, every lie is understandable. Everything we could possibly do that is outside of God's morality is explainable because we can say it's been done for the greater good. Are we tracking? And we go, yeah, God has this ethic that he calls us to. Yes, God has a will in a way that he calls us to. Not to become entangled in sin. Not to be tripped up by things we're not supposed to be attached to. Yes, there is an ethic within our lives to praise always, to pray always, to carry ourselves with integrity. And all of a sudden, when we claim responsibility for the results, I can negotiate my way out of any element of faithfulness and go, well, I was trying to do this. Daniel is faithful. Daniel is faithful. And I've got to wonder at some point in time, Daniel's wondering, God, are you going to come through? Like, are you going to get the law changed? Wouldn't you much rather that God comes through before you're thrown into the den of lions? Isn't that what we pray? Like, God come through, God deliver, long before we get to the lions. Like, come through on the front end. But Daniel's thrown into the lions. And the king asked this. He says, may your God, whom you serve so faithfully, rescue you. The king looks at Daniel and he says, Daniel, I know you're faithful. I know you're faithful. Will your God be faithful? I know you're faithful in your life. I know you're faithful in your calling. Will your God be faithful? This is how we ask it. This is how I ask it. I go, can I walk a life of faithfulness? And will God come through? You been here? Can I make this decision? Keep my integrity? Do what God has called me to do? And if I do, will God come through? God, I can be faithful, but will you be faithful on the other side? And let me flip that, because both of those are focused on the future, and we are called to look at God's past faithfulness. We are not called in any way to be paralyzed by can I, will God? Can I, will God? This is where our confidence is meant to come from. It is meant to be, I can live a life of faithfulness because he already has. Oh, come on, somebody. Come on, somebody. I can live out the life that God has called me to because he already has come through on my behalf. Oh, is there anyone here today who God has come through? I can be faithful in my relationships. I can get through the difficult circumstances and press on into the future. I can believe that God is for me, not against me, has a future for me, even no matter how difficult my past has been, because he has already come through. See, there is this missing context of the life of Daniel, and we look at Daniel's life, and let's just acknowledge this. It is not likely, I want to insert a Carol Baskin's joke, but we need to move on again, okay? It is not likely that you will ever face a den of lions with your life on the line. I'm not saying no, okay? I'm not going to rule out the possibility, but it is not likely that your life will be on the line with a den of lions in front of you. But don't miss this. There are lions all around you that are seeking to devour your soul. Don't miss this. Just because the lion isn't something you can see doesn't mean it's not there. See, if anger stays lodged in your heart, it will lead to a deep-seated entitlement that is always frustrated with what you believe should be yours and God hasn't given you. If anger is there, you will spend the rest of your days focused on what you don't have instead of what you do have. If there is bitterness within your soul due to the fact that you have not accepted God's forgiveness and extended that forgiveness to others, what is going to happen is you will spend the rest of your days focused on what has been taken from you or what others have done to you instead of the future that God is preparing for you. And the only narrative you will be able to tell yourself is how you've been wronged instead of how you've been blessed. Lions seeking to devour you. If lust is a part of your heart, you will spend all of your life jumping from thing to thing, career to career, relationship to relationship, trying to find the thing that can never fulfill and satisfy your soul. Let's not miss this. There are lions all around you seeking to devour you. And if you subtly slide into it, you will wake up one day, look in the mirror, and not like the person who's looking back at you. And so the testing point comes far before that. The testing point comes in the everyday moments of faithfulness, in what you usually do, in what you typically turn to. And you go, what am I gonna turn to for comfort? What am I going to turn to for strength? What am I going to turn to for hope? Your family is great. Trust me, your family is great. And I know you're looking at me like, not my family. Your family is great, okay? But they are not the ones who can fulfill and satisfy your life. Your job is great. It's great. I'm sure you know how great it is. Your boss is fantastic, especially if you work here. Your boss is fantastic. But no job will give you purpose in your life. That's internal. That's who you are. And too often we go throughout our days not realizing our very souls are being devoured. And the testing point, the moment of decision is you go, will I live out faithfulness? Will your God, whom you so faithfully serve, may he be able to rescue you? And I believe Daniel has all the confidence in that moment to go, I can go into the den of lions because God came through when I needed a meaning for a dream, because God came through when I had to tell the king his kingdom was being taken from him. And God came through when it was an issue of just vegetables in your marriage, in your family, in your job, with your faithfulness, with your relationships, with your romantic life. You can live out faithfulness because Jesus has already died and removed your sin. God has already come through on your behalf. Come on, church, I want this to the next level. Scripture tells us this. It says, tell of the faithfulness of the Lord. Tell of his mighty deeds. Tell of what he's done. If you have any confidence in your life from God has worked out in your own life, from what he has already done, let's give God praise today. I can. He has. He will. He will be there. I know who he is. I know he has a path for me. And then we get to this moment. Daniel is thrown into the lion's den. It says, very early the next morning, the king got up and hurried out to the lion's den. When he got there, he called out in anguish, Daniel, servant of the living God, was your God, whom you serve so faithfully, able to rescue you from the lions? Daniel answered, long live the king. My God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths so that they would not hurt me. Let me pause. Oh my goodness. Please see this. God doesn't remove the lions. He shuts their mouth. He doesn't remove the lions from your life. He puts them in a spot where they can't hurt you. God does not remove lust. He does not remove temptation. He does not make all these things not exist anymore so you can live a life of comfort. He puts you in a spot where what seeks to devour you can no longer hurt you, can no longer destroy you as you live out that faithfulness. He says, so they would not hurt me, for I have been found innocent in his sight. And I love Daniel throws this, and he says, and I have not wronged you, your majesty. He goes, I was thrown in the den of lions, and I didn't complain. I didn't say anything bad about you, not a word. I mean, I was in here with just lions. I know they couldn't tell anyway, but I didn't even say a negative thing about you while I was in, and I have not wronged you, your majesty. King Darius pulls him out of the lion's den. And then in verse 25, it says this, then King Darius sent this message to the people of every race and nation and language throughout the world. Peace and prosperity to you. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel. I have known this man's life my entire life. The accounts from his life is what I grew up on. But I have to tell you, over the last couple weeks, his life has come alive to me in a way that I never could have imagined. And when I got to this spot is where just God put something deep within my soul. King Darius has no scripture to refer back to. He has no testimonies of God's faithfulness to look at. He has no church to teach him who God is. All he has is the life of Daniel. And I wondered this. If Daniel's name was removed and mine was placed in there, what would be written next? If Daniel's name was removed and your name was placed in there, what would be written? There are people in your life that will not encounter Scripture, that will not stumble into church, but their first testimony of the faithfulness and might and power of our God is the very life that you live. And if your name is placed there, what gets written? What do you do as usual? Just as you have always done. What do you turn to? What is the testimony of our God that others will believe because of your life? Darius looks at Daniel, and because of Daniel's faithfulness, he says this: should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel. And this is what Daniel has taught me about God. He is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth, and he has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. What's written if it's your name? What's the testimony that others give? How do they know God? Is your as usual something that doesn't last? Is your as usual something that doesn't fulfill? Is your as usual something that only has the ability to numb you in the moment instead of overcome the obstacle that has been placed in front of you? Here's the deal. You might never stare into the eyes of a lion with your life on the line. But just because that might not happen, do not miss the fact that there are lions all around you seeking to devour you. And the way you live in that moment is the greatest testimony of who our God is. The way you live through ordinary moments of difficulty and hardship and pressing and pushing. Do you lash out? Do you yell? Do you organize and tidy up? Or do you distract? Or do you stay oh so present in that moment, knowing, I can. Because he has. He has. I have all the evidence I need that God will come through. I have all the evidence I need that God prepares a path for me, that he is for me, not against me, that he has a future for me, and my best days are still ahead of me. I have all the evidence that I need. And when your story is told by friends and family members and co-workers, let's be a church. Let's be a people that when they tell the account of our lives, they go, listen, let me tell you about their God. I might not even know them yet, but I've watched them. And their God enables them to stay when the relationship is hard and to be faithful when everyone else left. Their God enables them to have joy in the midst of trials and difficulty. Their God, oh my goodness, even when they're judged, even when someone is harsh to them, they respond with kindness and love. Their God gives them confidence in the midst of every difficulty, gives them assurance in the midst of every hardship. Their God, there's something about them that's different. That when the rest of us give up our virtues at the testing point, they are always courageous. They are always faithful. They are always loving. This is our God. He rescues and heals. He saves and redeems. He brings dead men back to life. He brings marriages and families back together. He takes the worst of circumstances and gives this resounding call of his love and his grace and his mercy. He shuts the mouths of the lions. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. No thing that is designed to go against you will be formed. Our God heals. Our God saves. Our God redeems in the midst of everything. This is your God, church. This is the God that you serve. And so I want to leave you with this. After several weeks on the life of Daniel, it is not lost to me that Daniel, who in this pinnacle moment of his life faces the lions, Daniel is from the tribe of Judah of the nation of Israel. And throughout the pages of Scripture, our God is referred to as the Lion of Judah. There are lions that are seeking to devour you, but there is a lion on your side fighting for you, and that lion lives within your very soul. Is he safe? Of course he isn't safe, but he's good. He's the king. And I want to leave you with a single verse. In Proverbs 28:1, it says this: the wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion. Church, there is too much on the line with your life. Be bold.